Hi there, my name is Abu and welcome to my channel. Now in this video, I'm going to talk about managing state in React. Now previously I made a video. If you haven't watched that video yet, I should advise you watch it first before coming to this one. We handle state locally within components. Now that's perfectly fine if you're working with an application that only has 2 or 3 components that depend on the state. But what if you have an application that has 10 components or 20 components that depend on the state? That won't be a good solution. Now, the solution for this that React has is Redux. I know there are many other libraries out there that manage state, but Redux is the most common one that you'll find out there. Everyone is using Redux, I believe. Now, in this video, I'll show you how to work with Redux and have one single source of truth of the entire application. And I'll show you how to create, update, read, and delete all of this data using Redux. And we're going to take it a step further. We will build a to-do list, a very simple to-do list, but you'll see all of this in action, how you can manage your state using Redux, using the single source of truth for the entire application. Now, I'm excited for this video. I hope you're excited too. And let's jump in and we can get started straight away without wasting any time. See you there. First things first, I'm going to show you how the final application is going to look like. Like I said, it's going to be a simple to-do list. So you can add some to-dos, maybe wake up in the morning and make coffee, maybe play tennis. I love playing tennis, by the way. I think I can play tennis every day. What you notice also is that you cannot add an empty to-do. So if I just press add to-do, I have an error here as there's an alert that pops up. If I also just add in only the space bar and try to add that, there's an alert also that comes up. So there's like a check, you have to add something. So maybe after playing tennis, maybe I can also go swimming, eat dinner, or also I can also go to bed maybe. And I want you to notice that, let me just add here maybe tea, just for the sake of argument. I want you to notice that there's a nice scroll that happens here. So that's just easy designs. I mean, you can do whatever you want with this. It's up to you. And now, what can you do with these things here? Now, you can mark a to-do as done, as you can see over there. And you can edit a to-do. For example, I actually spelled this wrong because I wanted to show you what will happen. So I can edit this, a to-do, so I can click on this and make a correction over here. I can make coffee like that. So when I update a to-do, notice it updates only that specific to-do that you want to update. And then you can also delete. I don't want to delete play tennis since I still want to play tennis. I can go for a swim, maybe not go for a swim, so I can decide to delete only that one. As you can see, maybe this T here shows a typo, maybe I can delete that specific to-do only. So you can do that, and also you can clear the to-dos. What happens is that we're going to do create, read, update, and delete all of these to-dos using Redux. Now, before we jump into the code, I mean, I know you're feeling and you're like, okay, Abu, when are we going to jump into the code? We're going to jump into the code very soon. Now, the next thing I want to show you is that I just want you to have a visual image in your head how Redux actually works and how it handles state management. Now, I have 2 images here. On my left is an application that is not running with Redux, as you can see. So when something initializes the state, as you see down here, you have to use props to move the state along all these entire components. That is without Redux. Now, just assume like over here, these are many components. You have to use props to update the state throughout the entire application. But what happens with Redux? Like I said, with Redux, there's a single source of truth. Now in this case, you have the store. Single source of the truth. Now, when this component initializes the change, the store picks up the change. What happens is that from the store, every other component that is subscribed to the store will pick up this update and re-render the UI. The next thing also I want you to notice that when I just scroll down here, I want you to also look at this, what happens. So it starts from the component, obviously. And this component dispatches what is called an action. We shall see all of this in action very soon, but it dispatches an action. Now this action goes to the reducer, and the reducer updates the state. in the store. We shall see all of this in action. And from the store, any component that is subscribed to the store is going to get updated by the new value of the state. This is the final diagram, I promise. Final diagram. Now, just you to have a clear understanding of how this actually works. This is the final diagram, I promise. Just as we saw up there, we have the component or the UI, which dispatches an action. Now, this action is picked up by the dispatcher, as you can see over here, and it calls the specific reducer. Redux can have many reducers, as many as you want, as long as it's doing a certain job. The action that you're going to send to the dispatcher is going to be picked up by the specific reducer that is supposed to manipulate the state. And after that reducer manipulates the state is updated, obviously. And after the state is updated, anything that is subscribed to the state gets picked up, or rather picks up this update, refreshes, and re-renders the specific view to the user. And that is how Redux works in a nutshell. Let's go to the fun part, and we should start coding. Now, for this application, I'm going to use Microsoft's VS Code. I mean, you can use any code editor out there that you want. I will initialize my application using Vite. I think Vite is much faster. So I'll just copy this and come back to my editor. And on the terminal, I'll just paste it there. And I'll initialize Vite in the latest. And there we go. And all I do is run npm install to install all my packages that I need for this specific application. Now, after this has finished installing all the packages required for this app, I'm going to run this application. So npm run dev, and now I'll go to the browser and run my initial application. Now, this is how my initial application looks like with Vite and React. Now, also, before we move on, I'm going to be styling with Tailwind CSS. So you can also use CSS or whatever you want. So I'll just go to framework guides over here and I'll pick Vite, and in Vite, I'm using React. So I'll just go over these steps very fast and come back when I am done. Now, after these two installations, the next thing to do is to just copy this into this Tailwind config. So when I come back to my editor, this is the file. I just copy these 2 lines over here. And the next thing to do is also to copy all of these utilities, components, and base in index.css, which I already did over here, and we should be ready to go with Tailwind CSS. Like I said, you can use CSS as it is if you wish, but I'm going to use Tailwind CSS for this course. In order for this to work, I'll just stop this server first and then run the server again so that it picks up the Tailwind CSS installations, and I should be able to start my application again. And after it is loaded, when I go back to my browser, I should be able to see the new changes with a very ugly interface of the initial application because I deleted every design and every style, but we won't really need most of this anyway. Let's get started with Redux. Now, Redux out of the box is a very weird tool to use. Okay, I say weird because it has a lot of configuration you have to do by hand, but there's something called Redux Toolkit. You can just go to reduxtoolkitjs.org and you should find this very amazing tool that is built on top of Redux, and it encapsulates all of the things that we had to do by hand, and it does it for you, so you don't have to write a lot of code on it. So when you go to get started, and you can see how to use this, you can just scroll over. I mean, you can read this at any time that you want, but I'm just going to go and start using this straight away. So I'm using npm, and I'll just copy this. Again, simple installations, nothing fancy really. And open my terminal. I'll open even another terminal down here and just install Redux Toolkit and come back to the browser again. And I also need to install React Redux. I'll also copy that and back to VS Code. Paste this there and also install React Redux. Back to the browser. When you continue scrolling down, a couple of things that we're going to use here, and the ones that we're going to use in this course. So one of them is the configure store over here, and you can read this anytime that you want. And also we're going to use the create slice. In case you don't understand what I say in this course, please, there's documentation for literally everything. You can still come back and read the documentation and try to understand it better. Back to VS Code. Now let's create our initial store, but first we can clean out this application for the things that we do not need. We don't need this app.js anyway, but let's come to this app.asx. We don't need this state here, and we don't need React state over here. We also don't need app.css. Actually, we don't even need this logo. We only need this function like that, and we don't need anything within this div, so I'll just delete all of this all the way down there, and I can just say home component, and I'll just save that, come back to the browser and check it. So I have home component, beautiful. Now back to VS Code again, just to check that my tailwind is working. I'll just make this text a little bit bigger, maybe 5XL, making it big, and maybe change the font to bold, just to see if tailwind is actually doing its magic. So back to the browser, and as you can see, there you go, tailwind is actually working. So back to VS Code, let's start creating the store. Where are we going to create the store? Over here in source directory, obviously. Create a new folder. I'm just going to call it store, and in the store I will create a file called store.js. Now this is not JSX, this is just JavaScript, and then we can start creating our store from scratch. Now a couple of things we need to install from Redux toolkit. So we have to import something here, configure store. This is the one that we want from Redux toolkit. And now down here we need to export this store. So constant store is equal to configure store, this one over here. Now this takes an object of reducers. So this is going to be our reducer object, and this will take multiple reducers here. Since we don't have any reducer yet, let's just leave it blank, and then we export default store. How do these components know where to pick this state data? This is where Redux does a very nice trick. Now, other than using props, Redux is going to encapsulate the entire application. So we're going to come to main.jsx and encapsulate the entire application with the store. Now, how are we going to do this? Two things here. One, we're going to import the store, the one we just created right now, and we're importing it from, that was in the folder called store, and the file is called store. Now, the other thing we need to import is from React Redux, and that is the provider. Now, this provider is the one that wraps the entire application, and it provides this state data to the entire application. Let me show you. So the provider is basically a component. So bring the provider over here, and I'm just going to cut this from here and paste it down over here so that it wraps the entire app. Now this provider has a prop called store, and it takes the store. Now don't get confused. The store over here is the one that comes with the provider component, but the store we are passing over here is the one that we just created. You can name this store up here anything that you want. You can call it foo, you can call it anything that you want, it doesn't matter. But whatever you're passing down here should be the one that you have created. So when I do this and I save that, now this application here and all of its components are going to have subscribed to the store. Now every component that I create that is going to be inside this app component will have access to the store. Do you see how smart that is? Very clever. And that is what I say, there is one source of truth. We are actually done with this, and the store, we might come back to that also. And back to this, let's see, do we need to do anything else here? We can add some design here, I think. Let's add some background or something like that to this application, so that when I go back to the final application, we have this very nice yellow gradient background. I have that as an image also. You can find a link in the repo if you want to copy that, or you can have your own design also, which is perfectly fine. So I want to add that background. Now in this div, it has a prop called style. Now in this style is where I want to add that specific background. But first I need to bring in that image and put the image in my assets. Now currently in my assets I don't have anything. I need to bring in that image. So I'm just going to drag that image and copy it in there. First things first, I need to import this gradient background. So all the way to the top. So I'll just import bg from, and as you must have guessed, go into the assets folder and get me the gradient background. Now in this style over here, I'll just put a double brace like that, and then now my background image, again this is just plain CSS. Now I'm gonna have a URL here. I will use the $sign so that I can pick the BG. So when I save this, and I also need to do something here, I need to make this to be full screen so tailwind comes in. So height, I just want to make it screen, and the width I also want to make it screen. So just occupy the entire screen. And when I check out my application now, and as you can see, I have my gradient background, which is looking really nice. So the application is actually shaping up. Now, the next thing that I want to do is to bring in the card. As you can see, we have this card that is holding the entire to-do list over here. And that's going to be really simple. And that's an entirely different component. So back to VS Code, and I will create another folder here. I'll just call it components. And this is where all my components are actually going to lie. So the first component I'm going to create is called card.jsx. And I'll just say I have an extension that will give me this boilerplate code. You can install the same extension also if you want. And now this card, I just need to import it in the main app.jsx file. So all the way to the top, I will just import card from components. So I have IntelliSense. It has just imported for me this card from this folder here. Now over here, instead of home component, I'll just put here card and self-closing tag. And when I save this, let's see what it looks like. And in my application, I have the card over here. Now, before anything else, I also need to add another div around this card so that I can position this card in the middle of the screen. Let me show you. And in this div, I can have my class name. Again, I will not type all of this. I'll just copy from my repo and maybe try to explain what I have done. So paste these designs over there when I save it. So what's happening here? I'm just making this container. That means it has margins from left and right, and margin in x-axis is just auto, and I'm giving it a flex, and I'm justifying the item center, and I'm placing also the item center, and the height of this is going to be screen. So when I look at the application, I should see the card in the middle of the screen. Beautiful. Now I need to start designing the card. Back to VS Code. Just a small design about the card also. If you're not understanding anything, you can pause the video and then go back a little bit, or you can also decide to just go back to the documentation of Tailwind CSS. Now I need to design my card a little bit. So again, from my repo, I'll just copy the designs and I'll just paste the designs in the card over here. So this div is going to have class name over here, and I'll just paste all of those designs. And this is just a bunch of designs, some width and some height, and I give it a minimum height, and I give it a BG color for amber, and a little bit of a shadow, and I rounded the edges, give it a padding of 2, place the items in the center, I give it a flex, and flex column obviously, and space in the y-axis to be 10, and I justify the content to between. So when I save this, I should have a nice looking card, as you can see over here, and it's starting to shape up almost something like this. The next thing that I want to do is, yes, I have a title here. Maybe I can add this title actually, because everything else is now a separate component. Maybe I think I should add the title and the button here. That should be within the card. So back to VS Code, I will add another div here, and then under this div is where my button is going to come in. And I'll just do away with this, and this is the clear button. And this button has a few designs also, so class name. So I'll just copy all of this buttons design also and paste it here. And it just has a few things. The BG is red 500. When I hover, it becomes BG red 700. Text is white, font is bold, padding in the y-axis is 2, padding in the x is 10, and rounded corners. When you focus, it has a line, and then when you also focus, it has a bit of a shadow. So I'm gonna save that. And on the top here, I should also add the title. And the title here was just as simple as saying my to-do list. And this title is an H1. So it's just going to be a simple of my to-do list for today. Now, this also has a bit of styles. So class name, copy these styles and paste them here. So this is just the text size 3XL. Font is semi-bold and the style is underlined. So save that. Let's see what it looks like. And this is how my app looks like now. I have the to-do list and I have the clear button. It's actually shaping up to be like this already. The next thing that I want to do is I want to start bringing in the forms, the add to do form and the update to do form. So back to VS Code, obviously this is also a component. I'm going to create these components also. So I have add to do form.jsx, and then I'm going to create another one also, update to do form.jsx. Again, like I said, I think I'll just copy all of this from my repo. I don't want to type out all of this. So just copy all of this from my repo. You can do the same. So paste this there. So this is my add to do form. I can also bring this to the card. So all the way to the top, I don't need this. I'll just import add to do form, and all the way down in the same position, I'll just bring it here. So add to do form and self-closing tag, save it. Let's see how it looks like. And there we go. It's already shaping up. Now, this design is not very nice, and I need to do something small with this div over here. I need to add some styles. So class name, and again, I will just paste this from my repo. So paste in these designs, save it. So I'm just giving it a flex column, give it some space in the Y, full width, and then a height, and then minimum height is maximum, and items are in the center. So save this. Back to the view, as you can see, now it looks a lot better. Back to VS Code. Now this to-do form is also supposed to be in another div. Very many divs are going to create here. I hope you're following with me. Just have this in there, and it has a bit of styling. So class name. Like I said, this course is not really about styling with Tailwind CSS. You can make this design in any way that you want. I just want to have styles out of the way so that as soon as we start building the code and writing the actual code that we want to learn how to do, we don't have to worry about styling anymore. So this actually looks amazing. The thing that we need to start doing, maybe let me also bring in update form first before we do anything. It's actually basically the same as this. I could just copy all of this, actually paste it over here, and all I need to do is just change this to, just press F2, change this to update to do form, and that's it. And back to CRUD.jsx all the way to the top. I'm also going to import update to do form, and I'll just put it underneath this one. No matter, we shall worry about making which one look first. So save this, and let's see how it looks like. Okay, maybe change the styling of this button a little bit because they are different. So back to VS Code, back to update to do. So come over here. Only thing I'm gonna do now is just paste the designs of the update to do form. Save that, and let's see how it looks like. Also change the word from add to update. So back to VS Code, instead of add, I'm going to call it update. And I think we should be done with the designs for now. So as you can see, perfect. Now, let's go to the store. That's where the actual magic is now going to happen. Now let's go back to the store. We need to create our first slice. These are called slices, reducer slices. And let's create our first slice. Normally, you can do this the way you want, but I like to create another folder called features. And this is where I'm going to create my slices. Now, in this features folder, let's say you had many other slices that you wanted to do. You could create more folders in here. My only folder that I'm going to create here is for the to-dos. Now in this to-do, I'm going to create one called the to-do slice.js. Again, this is just JavaScript. It's not JSX. This is where we're going to create our first slice, and then we're going to create our initial state. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to import something, and that thing is, if you remember, is called create slice, this one over here, from Redux toolkit. Redux toolkit needs a initial state, just gonna call it that, is equal to, now basically what you're going to have here is just an array of objects. These to-dos have an ID, maybe call it 1, and maybe the name of the to-do, wake up. That is my first to-do, put a comma here, and then make a couple of copies down. So this is my second to-do, and this is my third to-do. The second to-do is going to be maybe make coffee, and the third to-do is going to be play tennis. You must have guessed this one. And I'm going to save this. And now, how are we going to export this state to the entire application? That is where this create slice hook comes in play. So down over here, I'm going to just say export constant to do slice. So this is going to be equal to create slice, and in this create slice, basically this is also an object. Now this create slice expects a couple of things. The name of the slice, this is very important. Now this I'm just going to call it to do. That's the name of my slice. Now the next thing, it also expects the initial state. Now in JavaScript ES6, if the name of the key is the same as the name of the value, you can only give it one name like this. Normally we would do something like initial state is equal to initial state, something like that. But in ES6, it's allowed. You can only put here like this if they're both the same names. So I'll just go with ES6 syntax like that. Now the next one is now the reducers. This is also very important. Now this reducers is also basically an object. Everything is literally an object, and you don't have to do a lot with it, as you'll see when we go on. Now I'll just leave this like that for now, and then I'll need to export this entire reducer. So all the way to the bottom, I will export default, obviously, to do slice dot reducer, and I'm going to save this. If you must have noticed, we created something in our store, this reducer over here, but we didn't put anything there yet. And now we have to import this reducer that we just exported onto the store so that it can be available in the entire application. So back to the store, I'm going to import to do reducer like that. It doesn't matter how you name it actually. From now, this is going to be in features and in to do and in to do slice. Now over here, I can give this a name. So these are just my to-dos, and these to-dos, you should map it to the to-do reducer. So I'm going to save this. I have tab 9 actually running. It's an AI. That's why you notice I have an autocomplete in my code. I would suggest you install the tab 9 extension. It's amazing and it helps you to complete your code. Now back to the application. How shall we know that we have some state data? Because remember, we initialized our state with a couple of values up here. But how are we going to know that these values actually exist in our application? So there is a tool called Redux Dev Tools. It's a very good extension you can add to Chrome. Now, in order to look if we have anything, we can right click and we inspect the page. And when we come to Redux, and what do you know, we have something here called to-dos, and we have the to-dos. I just created this: wake up, make coffee, and play tennis. And these are not coming from anywhere, guys. These are coming from over here, what we just created. Now, some of you might ask, where do we get this name here, to-dos? I want you to pay very close attention to this. Where do we get this name to-dos? Now, this is coming from the state, by the way. Back to the app, and when I come down over here, it's the one, this one. So when I change this to to-do and I save it, when I come back to the browser, I should see this one has also changed to to-do. Now, that is where this comes from, and it's very important, as you will see when you continue building this application. So I'll just put this back to to-dos and save it, and I should have the same look. And I have my to-dos, and these are my to-dos over here. Now, the other thing maybe we can do is, other than having these names 1, 2, and 3, we can create specific IDs. And when we come to the to-do slice, Redux Toolkit has a very nice tool called Nano ID, and this will actually build for us different IDs. So just Nano ID, execute the function there. I'll just copy this and paste it there. So when I save this back to my application, I should see very nice looking IDs. That is just by the way. You can decide to use it or you don't use it also. It's also fine. I just prefer using it. Now, we want to populate these to-dos in our front end, in our UI. Now, as you must have guessed, when we come back to our application, and I can close this for now. These are just the Redux Dev Tools. And if you look at this application, if I add something here, wake up, for example, I have this nice looking card over here, and that's what we need to also design. So back to our application, and it also comes as a component. So in the components folder, I'm going to add another file. You can call it anything you want. I'll just call it single to do card.jsx. And again, using the extension RAFCE, it will give me a boilerplate code. I already have these designs. So the only thing I'm going to do here is just copy what I have from my repo and then paste to this code over here. So save that and back to the application again. This one over here, just reload it. And I need to call this in the card. So back over here, come back to the card, also import it from the top, single to do card. So for now, I'll just put it in this space over here, just to see how it looks like. So self-closing tag, save it, back to the application, and this has broken. Let's inspect it again and see. Back to the console, and it's saying BS check. Okay, yes, we need to add React icons to this because since we're using a couple of icons. So you can open another tab and just search for React icons, and we should just install all of this also in our app. So I'll just copy this and back to my application, open the terminal and install React icons, and I should be able to bring in a few icons. So all the way from the top in my single to do card, I'll just import a couple of icons that I need to use. So I'll just paste this again from my repo and then I'll save it. And let's just check if this has finished installation. As soon as it's done, there shouldn't be any error anymore. So back to the front end and reload this, and I shouldn't see any error anymore. And as you can see, we have the card. It's not looking very nice still, but we have the buttons over here. They still don't do anything. Obviously, we haven't set anything yet. Now, the other thing we need to do is bring in everything that we have from the state. Maybe let's first make this look a little bit neater. Back to VS Code. In CRUD.jsx, I can have here another div. And in this div, I can bring in the single to do. And this div has a few classes that I'll also bring in from my repo. So class name, and I'll paste it. That's just the width. I need this to be of that width. Let's see how it looks like. And it should spread out just like how we see it on this other side. It's already looking really neat. Now, the other thing we want to do now is to bring in the entire state that we have, because if we inspect this again, we have a couple of items in our state, and there are 3 actually. So we want to bring in all of this into the application that we have. Back to this, and now we're going to use a couple of things from React Redux. And what are these 2 things we're going to use? So I'm going to import, first things first, I want to import the use selector. Now, just as it says use selector, all it does is select whatever is in the state. Basically, that's it. It just selects whatever is in the state. Now, down over here, all you need to do is const. I'll just call this my todos, and this my todos equals to use selector. Now, this hook is what speaks to React Redux and the state. Now, I'll go to the state and just return for me something. This state object has everything that's in the state, and this is where it's very important. Like I was telling you, the next thing we're going to name here has to be exactly what you see here. Back to the card. So state.todos and .todos, and I'm going to save this. Now let's just see what's here, and we just log in the console and we see if we're actually picking what we want. So my todos. So I'll just save this, and I'll come back to my application. Just reload this, don't really need to, and back to the console. Let's just look at the console. What do we have? And as you can see, we have the to-dos in the console. That means that this variable here is holding all the to-dos that we want. Isn't that amazing? So all we need to do now is, so other than just having this single to-do card like this, we can set it as a list. This is very easy actually. So we're going to have an unordered list, UL. Now in this unordered list, we're going to also have a list item. Basically, this is how we are going to use this. But first things first, obviously, I want to set some designs in this unordered list. So class name, I'll just again copy this and paste it out, and maybe try to explain what's happening here. So width is full. This means that since the parent, this is the parent div over here, and the parent div is 3 out of 4, which means it's 75% of the width. Now, this UI is also a parent of this LI. The unordered list is a parent of the list item. Now, all I'm saying is that take the full width, which means it will take this exact width over here, and just give it a maximum height of 72. You can play this with whichever numbers you want. And the overflow design of the y-axis is the scroll. That's where we get the scroll effect when it reaches the maximum height. In this to-do item is where we are now going to map all of these my to-dos. So my to-dos, since it's an array, we're going to map it. So we're going to map it and take one to do. So it's going to run over the array one item at a time. That's what map does. And I just want you to return something. What are you returning? I want you to be very careful here, because this actually happened to me many times, and I was like, what's going on with my code? So if you use curly braces like that, you need to remember to explicitly write return, and then you can have your list items. But since this is just going to be a one line of code, you may not really need to do all of this. All you need to do is use parentheses. This is very important for you. So in case it doesn't work, please check this first. Maybe that could be the same thing that is happening to you. And then I can now move this Alt and up arrow. I move this inside the return statement of this map function. This LI is the one that's going to contain the single to-do card again. Alt plus up arrow, I put it within the LI. Now, when you're creating a list, you're going to have a key. It's very important. React has to keep track of every item of the list. So this key is going to be in the todo.id, because remember, if we go back to our application and when I come back to Redux, every to-do has an ID over here, or even check from the console. So every to-do has an ID. So that's what we're actually putting here first. So the key is going to be a to-do. Now React won't be having any problems with us as soon as we do this. And maybe also a bit of a class. I need to give it a margin bottom of maybe 3. Actually, this works for me, and I'm going to save this. So even without doing anything here, and we already have 3 to-dos, but we have hard coded this wake up. So we need to send this wake up through props to the single to-do card. So let's do that. Back to this. How are we going to do this? We're going to just create a prop here called name, and this name is going to be to-do.name. It's as simple as that. Now, when we come back to the single to-do card over here, we already have props that we are receiving. So other than hard coding wake up, we're going to pick this from props.name, and I'm going to save this. And back to my application, I should see wake up, make coffee, and play tennis. Isn't this amazing? This is perfect. And I am not using props to bring out this wake up, make coffee, and these are all coming from the state. The next thing that we need to do here, let's just come back to the application and see what's going on. So the first thing we're going to do is just hide this update to do, and we're going to go back to the card over here. So I'll just comment this out for now, and when I come back to my application, I should see something like this. So the next thing on this list that we want to do is to add a to-do. Now we want to start creating our reducers, and these reducers are going to catch the actions that we're going to send. Now, first thing we're going to do is, how are we going to add a to-do to this to-do list? First things first. Now, back to the code, I'm just going to go to the to-do slice over here, and I'm going to create my first reducer. Now, my first reducer is going to be called to-do added. Normally, it's advised for you to name your to-dos in past tense. And you can name it anything you want, present tense, continuous tense, it doesn't matter, but I like to call them in past tense. So, and this takes an action and it returns something. Before we continue, we need to tweak our state a little bit, because remember, we're going to toggle update, and we're also going to toggle the form. Now, this initial state cannot be like this. Basically, what we're going to do is this initial state, we want to make it an object, so that it will have to-dos, and these to-dos will contain this. The to-do key will contain that, the initial state, and then we shall also have toggle the form. Now, this toggling the form is whether we show update form or we show the add form. So initially, we're just going to set it to true, the initial state, and we're also going to update the to-do. So to-do update, we're going to start with an empty object. Save that. Now, you will notice that our application might have broken again like that because it's not understanding something. When you go back to the console, it's telling us my to-dos is not a function. So what's happening here? Since we have created another layer on the state over here called to-dos, we need to explicitly tell React that once you go to the to-dos, now in this to-dos, it has 3 items, the to-dos, toggle form, and to-do update. So when we come to the card over here, other than just saying go to the state.todos, we also need to specifically say to-dos and save it. Now, this must have fixed the problem, and we are now back. Keep in mind, everything that you do has a ripple effect everywhere else. Back to the VS Code, since we already have that. Now, we're going to go back to the slice, and we're going to come down to update to do. We're going to take the state dot to-dos, and this is going to be, it's an array. What are we going to do? We're going to do a spread operator, copy everything from the state dot to-dos, and what do? Add the action dot payload, and we're going to save this. Now, the payload is anything that you send to the state. For example, if somebody types play tennis, that is the payload that we're talking about. So we're just going to copy everything that is in this array, and we're going to add whatever payload that has been sent by the user. Like I said, the payload is going to be like, maybe you've typed in go and swim. Now, go and swim is going to be the payload that is going to be added onto this, and it's going to be saved as the new value of the state.todos. We're going to see all of this in action very soon. Now, that is to-do added. So after doing that, now we're going to go to the to-do form. Now, this is where something is going to be added by the user. Actually, before we come here, we need to export this reducer. Now, down over here, we need to export constant. We're going to destructure. What are we destructuring? To do slice dot actions. Now, these are the actions that are going to be sent by the user, like to do added is an action. Okay. Now, when this action is sent, it's taken by the reducer. Now, normally in Redux, you'd have two separate files of actions and reducers. But with Redux Toolkit, this same function that you see over here is both an action and a reducer. So when a user sends an action, for example, when they type in play tennis and sends that as an action, this is picked up by the reducer as an action, but then at the same time, the reducer is going to be called and execute this manipulation that you can see down here. So that's the best thing about the Redux Toolkit. So to do added, export it from there. Now add to do form all the way to the top. We're going to import that. So import to do added from store features to do and to do slice. And obviously over here also, we're going to need a couple of things. And one of them is going to be the nano ID, remember, from Redux Toolkit. And the other thing we're going to need is the use dispatch, because we want to dispatch this action. So import use dispatch from React Redux, this one over here, not this. First things first, we need to know how to manipulate this. So if we go back to the application and try to type in something, let's go back to this, and I think we can also go back and remove that console. I don't need that console log anymore. This one over here, I can take it out. We don't need it. And I can minimize this. And I want to see if when I'm typing something, it actually comes here. So how are we going to do this? We need to now, this is where the local state comes in. All the way here. Now from React, we need to import something. Import use state. Now this is the local state, because if no other component needs to know what happens with the state of another component, then that component should only have its state local to itself. So over here, constant, I'm going to just destructure this array, input and set input, and this is going to come from use state, and initially it's just going to be an empty string. Over here, now this input here has two things that we need to specify to it. One of them is going to be the value. What value is it going to have? Now, as you must have guessed, the value is going to be the input. This input over here, this one that we just created. But we need to do something when that value changes. So on change, when it changes, we're just going to call a simple function here and set input to be, again, this has to take an event, and this event is the one that has the target and the value. So save this, and when we go back to the application, this should still work. So without this onChange method, if we just put the value, do away with this, and I put this value, maybe also just to show you, let me show you what exactly is happening here. So back to the top over here, I'll create a function here, handle change, and this is going to be equal to, it takes something called event. You can call it whatever you want, but I'm just going to log it to the console. So console.log e. I want you to see what exactly is inside that value, the e value. So down over here, other than using this inline, I'm just going to call handle change and save that. Now back to the application. You see, nothing is going to happen. When I try clicking on it, nothing is happening because we are not changing this value yet. We're not setting the new value of the input. But if we look at the console over here, this is the event that I'm talking about. And this event has a target over here, and this target has a value. And you can see this is the value that we have over here. That's why over here in the application, I can now come here and say set input to be equal to e.target.value. So save that. This value here is what we are setting as the new value of the input. So back to the application. If I remove this now, it should be able to give me the value. So now I can type in because I'm getting the exact value from the target. Now back to VS Code. I don't really need to have this here. It will just disrupt with my entire code. I want to have this very minimal focus. I'll just put it back here, and I'll have an anonymous function here and paste this there and just call E like that. And I don't need this function anymore all the way here, and this should still work. So I have placeholder. What's going on here? Something is missing. Just come back to this and so save that. And this is not S, it's E. So save that, and this should work just as expected. Perfect. Now this is a form, and we want to do something with this form. Now forms have an on submit, and I'm going to call a function called handle submit, just like that. And onto the top here, I will create it constant handle submit, and this doesn't take anything. Now this is where we have to manipulate this input from the user. Now first things first, obviously this also takes a value that comes from the browser, but first thing we want to do is prevent the default behavior. Now this means that anytime you click on the submit button, it's going to refresh the page. So what we don't want is for this thing to keep refreshing this page every time. So that's what prevent default does. And also up here, we're going to create a variable called dispatch, and this is coming from use dispatch. Now this is what is going to dispatch the action. Which action? This action here of to do added. Okay, now back down over here, we need to make a couple of checks. I used regular expressions, or if you want to call it regx, to do all of this. I'll just copy my regx from my repo and paste it over here. Now this just means that if there is space and if there is no item, please do some alert. And over here I will have the alert. What alert do I have? Enter a to do, so that in case someone is trying to add something without adding any character or text, please do that. And I'm going to set input again over here as an empty string, so that in case someone has just put space, set it back as an empty string. Now and then I'll just return. Now in the next part is where I want to dispatch this action. Now what action am I dispatching? I'm dispatching to do added action. This to do added action, I'm going to add in two things. Very simple really. An ID, and this ID I just want to bring it from the nano ID. Just give me a random value, and it has a title. Very simple as that. And the title is the input from the user. And after you've done all of this, title is the input from the user, and after you've done that, set input also here to an empty string. Now that is what happens when you submit the form. Now let's come back to our application, reload this, try to add something empty. As you can see, enter a to do. Okay, if I put space, enter a to do. What if I add something else? Go and swim, add this, and I'm not seeing anything over here. What is going on? So let's check on our console, and we can check on the Redux. What's happening here? We have swim. It's actually appearing, but okay, I see what the problem is. We used title here, but in the first one we used name. So let's just go back to VS Code over here and change this from title to name. Save it. Now let's have a look, and let's just reload this for now, and then put again swim, and we should be able to see swim over here. Perfect. Now our first thing that we have done is create. We have created a to do. Isn't this amazing? Really simple. We have basically finished with one of the parts of this entire application, and that is creating a to do. Now the next thing we want to do is clear the to dos. This button over here. Let's just make this button here work. Clearing the to dos. Now this is the easiest of all. We're just gonna go back to the slice over here, and we're just gonna call this to dos cleared. Just if I can spell it right, to dos cleared, and this takes in the state. It doesn't take any action. Now this is the easiest of all. So state dot to dos equal to an empty array. It's as simple as that. Very simple. One line. So then over here we need to export it. So to dos cleared, save that. Now we're gonna go back to the CRUD over here and bring that in. So first things first, import to dos cleared, this one over here, to dos cleared, and then also we need to import the dispatch. So this is also coming from React Redux. So use dispatch. like that. So down over here, we're going to constant dispatch, if I can spell it right, is going to be equal to use this, if I can spell this, use dispatch. Now all the way down to the button, it's going to be really simple. So on click, so when somebody clicks on this button, what happens? So on click, again, we're going to just create an anonymous function over here, and we're going to dispatch an action. Now the action we're dispatching is called todos cleared, this one over here. It's as simple as that, very simple. Let's test it and see if it works. Back over here, we can reload this if we want, and clear. Nothing is happening yet. What is going on? Back to VS Code. I need to see to do, oh yeah, we need to call this function from here. That should work it out. So back to this, and bam, there you go. Todos cleared. When you reload, since we are persisting this data in an array, that's why we keep seeing this still appear here. So clear, it's also working, perfect. Now, the next thing we're going to do is maybe just have this work also. When someone clicks on this, just change the style of this text, as simple as that. And this is also going to be very simple. This is going to be within the single to-do card over here, and we're going to use state. So all the way to the top, we are importing use state from React, this one over here. And where is it? Up here. So constant, we're going to destructure this, done, and set, done. When you mark to do as done or complete, and this is coming from use state, and initially it's going to be false. That means you are not yet done with your to do. So over here, I'm just going to come and have a look at the prop, the title over here. It's going to have a class name, and this class name is going to be dynamic, and it's going to depend on this done state. So if it's true and if it false. So if it's true, we're just going to have a font, maybe semi-bold. Let's make this font a little bit bold, but then we shall also have line through like that. And if it's false, we shall only have the font as semi-bold. And save this. Let's see how this looks like now. Yeah, it's a little bit bold. The text is popping up a little bit. So when I click on this, nothing is happening yet. What is going on? And I need to come down to the green one over here, the check. Okay, I need to add something here, on click method. So when someone clicks on this, what happens? Just an anonymous function also. It's going to be as easy as saying just set done. Just give me the opposite of done. It's as simple as that. So save it, back to the application. Now when I click on this, I should see a strike through text. Okay, this is shaping up to be nice actually. Now the next thing that I want to do, which should also be very easy, is to delete a to-do, and then we shall come back to edit. Edit is a little bit complicated. I want to leave it for the last. Basically, saving the best for last. So I want to get done with the deleting the to-do. Just one of the to-dos, not everything. As you see over here, I want to delete just one of them. So how are we going to accomplish this? One, we need to take that ID. That ID is very important. We need to grab that ID and then go to the to-dos state and then find that specific one and remove it from the to-do state. It's as simple as that. Now the first thing we're going to do is go back to our slice. Now onto our slice over here, we're going to add something else. Now this was to-dos cleared. Now I want to do deleted. And this is going to take the state obviously, and it's also going to take the action. Now why do we need the action in this to do deleted? We need the action because we're going to send a payload. Now the payload we're going to send here is going to be the ID of that specific to do. That's why we need the action over here. Now just going to go to state.todos will just be equal to, very simple, state.todos.filter. Again, I have an AI that's helping me with this. You should install tab 9. It's a very good extension. That's why it's giving me these hints on what to do. So I want to filter something. What do I want to filter? Take the to do, and in this to dos, I want you to filter. So to do.id, give me everything, the one that is not equal to the action.payload. Let me just make this like that. What's happening here is that, so the filter method returns another array, And what's happening is that it will return an array that this ID here does not exist. Basically, that's it. Whatever payload you've sent, remove that specific item from the array and give me the rest that does not match the one that's coming from the payload. It's as simple as that. One line also. It's really easy. So this is going to be the delete. So save this again. Down over here, you have to remember to export it also. So to do deleted also should be exported. Save that also. Now back to the single to do CRUD. Now this single to do CRUD has a couple of things that we have. We have obviously the name here, and we also have the ID. But then when we come to the CRUD, we can also send the ID over here. So I'll just send the ID, and this will be equal to todo.id. And that I'm also sending as a prop, the ID of that specific to-do item. Now, back to the single to-do CRUD. Through the props, I can also access the ID. Now, all the way down, when someone clicks on this trash over here, I want you to do something. Let's check on the top. First things first, we also need to import a few things. And what are these things? The first one is the action. And this one is called to do deleted. And then also we need the dispatch hook. So also import use dispatch, this one over here, from React Redux. And all the way to the top also here, we can create a variable called dispatch, and this is equal to use dispatch, and that's the one that's going to send that action. So all the way down in this trash icon, when someone clicks on, so it has an on click. When someone clicks on it, what happens? An anonymous function, and this returns dispatch. We're going to dispatch an action here. What action are we dispatching? To do deleted. But this to do deleted is expecting a payload, and the payload is going to be props.id. It's as simple as that. Save this and let's try it out. Let's see if it actually works. Reload this and bam, there you go. Bam, play tennis has gone and everything has gone. Reload this again. What do you know? You can now delete, mark it as done, and delete, mark it as done, and delete. The best for the last, updating. Now updating has many things that are all going around. First, when you click on this button here, first we want to change this form from add to update, and then also we want to fill in this form over here, the input section, with whatever is there on the to-do list item. Now first things first, when someone clicks on this, we want to toggle the form from true or false so that we can toggle this entire layout. Let's do that first. So back to VS Code, we're going to go back to the single to do CRUD. Now this one over here on edit. Now remember we have on the slice toggle form. Now we want to change this from true to false. This is going to be very easy actually. First thing we're going to do here is toggle form, maybe input form, and this might not need to take anything actually, just the state honestly, and state dot toggle form equals to, just give me the opposite of what's there, opposite of what is on state dot toggle. So all the way down again, I need to remember to export this. So toggle input form, and I come back to my single to do CRUD all the way to the top. I need to import it here, toggle input form. This is also coming from the slice obviously. Now when someone clicks on this button over here, on click anonymous function, and I'm just going to call dispatch. I need to dispatch an action. So dispatch again something here. We're dispatching toggle input form. Now something else is going to rely on this form. Now back to the CRUD. Remember how we commented out this update form? We don't need to comment it out like that. We can select also something. At first we selected the to-dos, but now we want to select constant toggle form. Now this is going to be equal to use selector, and go to the state. In the state, we're going to go to the to-dos. Now in the to-dos, we're going to call out toggle form. So I can actually just copy this and come back over here and paste it there. So we are calling toggle to do form. So I'm going to check if this is true, show me one, and if it's false, show me the other. It's as simple as that. So Control V. So if that is true and if it's false, the initial value is true, I think. So if it's true, give me that. And if it's false, give me that. I can actually remove all of this, and I'm going to save that. Now let's try and see what happens. So, and update, update and add, update and add. Now also maybe just to see the difference that this is loading something else, let's go back to the update form and change this placeholder from add to do to update to do. So save that. Now back to the application. As you can see, the placeholder is now update to do, add to do, update to do, add to do. That's perfect. The second thing we need to do is that when someone clicks on this button, we need to send this value and the ID. And what do? We need to update to do to be updated. So we are creating another state for only one to do that is going to be sent when someone clicks on the edit button. It's as simple as that. All the way down. So toggle input form. So first things first, obviously, we are going to do this. But then the next thing that we also do, we're going to go to the state and pick to do update, or rather to do to be updated. And what do we need from here? All we need to do is that, also the same thing. This is an object. Take the state again, state dot to do to update, this one over here. And what do we need to do? Copy everything from action dot payload. Let's press spacebar. So that means that whenever you click the update button, this over here happens. Now this is expecting a payload. So over here, I'm just going to also call the action, and also remember this is toggle input form. Is that like that? Perfect. Now back to the single to do CRUD. When someone clicks on this, we need a few things here to be sent as actions. So we're going to send this as an object like this. We need an ID, obviously, and this ID is coming from props.id. Thank you very much to this AI of tab 9, and then the title, or rather the name for that matter. The name is going to be props.name. That is what we are sending up to the empty object that we have over here. Let's see what happens. Back to the application. I'm going to just reload this, and I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to check over here in my to-dos, and then I see to do to update. As you can see, it has updated it with the button that we pressed. Let's try another one. Reload this, and then make coffee. Click on that. Let's check over here, and then check update, make coffee. So we have that specific value. Now, what are we going to do this with this specific value? First things first, obviously, we need to populate this part over here with the value that has come. And obviously, this is going to be very simple since we have it in the state. We have this value in the state. It's going to be very easy for us to put this value to be up here on this to-do form. Let's do that first. Back to VS Code on update to do form over here. We need a few things from here. All the way to the top again, we need to import a couple of things. From React Redux, we need to import use selector because we need to select, and then we need to also import the use dispatch because we shall be dispatching an action at some point. So constant to do to update. It's going to be very simple. Use selector over here, and just get the state and return something. State dot to dos dot, what are we getting from the to dos? To do update. So just bring this and put it there. And now also something, we need to also import use state from React. So import use state from React, and up here we need to bring this. We have to put it down because the value up there is the one that's going to be on the value of the state. So constant. So this is what we're going to update, and then we're also going to set update. So this is going to be equal to use state and to do to update dot name. It should be name. Let me just check to confirm. Back down here dot name. Perfect. Now we can console log this value and see if that's the value that we want. Console.log update. Let's just see if that is the value that we are actually receiving. So save that. Back to the application. Just reload this again and click on this. Let's go to the console and check. We have wake up. Perfect. Back to VS Code. Over here, we need to set the value. And the value that we're setting here, surprise, 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 the value is going to be update. It's as simple as that. So save that. and I don't need this console here anymore. I'll just remove it for now, save it, and now I'm going to come and click here on change anonymous function again, and it takes in an event. So event.target value, perfect. And this one over here, we need to, let me cut it, set update is going to be equal to that. Save that. Now when I come back to the application, just reload this a little bit and send this up there, and I can do something with it, but I cannot update because we haven't yet set that update. Okay, now let's come back and set that update really fast, and back to VS Code, and now we want to implement the update. So up here on the form again, on submit, when someone clicks on the button, we want to do something. So handle submit, save that. Now on the top over here, we create that function, constant handle submit, and this doesn't take, it takes an event. Let's prevent the default behavior with this. So return something. First things first, e.prevent default. Thank you very much, AI. And all the way down to the bottom, we want to do something with this. So when somebody clicks on this, we shall do the same thing again as we did previously. So we are going to check if, again, I'm going to use regex, regular expression. So just check if there's a space or if there's no character, do something. What are we doing? Just send out an alert, and this alert is going to say enter a to-do, and after doing that, we're going to set update to an empty string, and after we're just going to return. And else, if everything is okay, we're going to dispatch an action, and the action we're going to dispatch is going to be to do updated. And this, obviously, we need the state and we need the action. And now this is going to be very easy. First, we're going to go to the state, and then we find that specific to do that we want to make an update on. Now what we're going to do here, just get the to do to update. This is going to be equal to state.todos.find. So what are we finding? Get me that to do. Which to do are we trying to get? Now to do.id should be equal to action.payload.id. Now what happens is that we're going to send payload with this action also. So first things first, we're going to get that specific ID and match it, and then we find that specific item in that array. Now after finding it, so to do to update title, sorry, we're going to change its name. It's actually name is going to be equal to action.payload.name. It's as simple as that. And then after, whenever someone has finished clicking that, just get me the state.toggle form. Just make it the opposite of whatever is there. State.toggle form. It's as simple as that. And then to do updated, we also need to send this out to do updated. So on the form over here, we need to import this action to do updated, and then when someone clicks on this button on this else part, so we're going to handle this action. So what happens when everything checks out? We're going to dispatch. We haven't yet constant dispatch be equal to use dispatch. Perfect. Did we import it on the top? Yes, very good. Now down here, we're just going to dispatch an action. What are we dispatching? To do updated, and this has some payload. First payload is ID. Now this ID is going to be the ID that's going to come from what we selected up here, to do update. So the ID is going to be to do to update.id. The name is going to be the update, whatever the user has set as the update. It's going to be as simple as that. Now let's test it out and see if it will actually work. Back to the browser and wake up and brush my teeth, and when I update, there you go, it's updating. Make coffee and drink it. Bam, it's updating. And there you have it. We have just created a CRUD application using Redux. And this, we have done it from scratch. And we have done it all using Redux, and we've built a simple to-do list. Now, a couple of things I didn't complete to do, and I will not finish that. I will leave that for you to finish by yourself. When you look at the initial application, when I reload this, there's a simple design. When there are no items in the array, you should check for that. If there are no items, have a simple design like this. And if you add something, and if I try to update this, I want you to watch, this entire view here disappears and it has something else, as you can see. So mine and yours, maybe when you update it, and then this comes back. So I will leave all of that for you. You should try to finish all of that. If you cannot, or if you fail, please, I'll leave a repo in the description of this video. You can have a look at how I have done that. And with that, I can call this a wrap for this class. Might have been long, but it's very important, and I hope that you've understood everything that I have said within this class. If you have any questions, please leave it in the comment section, or you can also subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed yet, and I will see you on the next video. I hope this has helped out. Stay hungry and stay foolish.